Over the last little while, I've given my opinion on a slew of Tony Hawk series games. You might agree with me, you might not. I know for sure a few of you don't. I know I'm not completely in tune with the popular opinions, but I think by the end of today's video we'll all have something we can agree on. Sharpen me a crown and call me an edgelord, because today I'm taking a look at Skateboard Madness Extreme Edition. Let's get started. First up, some backstory. Phoenix Games, established sometime in the 90s, is a Dutch-based shovelware producer probably most well known for their line of hilarious Dingo Pictures games. For reference, Dingo Pictures was a German animation company that produced a lot of really poor quality knockoff films. This chain of bootleggery is legendary. It also doesn't make a lot of sense. Both Phoenix Games and Dingo Pictures put a shit ton of effort into producing low effort stuff en masse. If they channeled all of the years and effort into making just a few good properties, they might have been an actually viable company. Skateboard Madness Extreme Edition, released in April of 2007, is one of the many non-Dingo Phoenix Games titles. And before anything at all, I need to point out that this game is just 45 megabytes compressed. For the PlayStation 2, the average size for a game is anywhere from 1.5 to 6 gigabytes. That's 133 times larger than this game, just to put things into perspective. Stuff like this always makes me feel bad for gamers in Europe. America has shovelware, but it's barely a fraction of what Europe has. This game doesn't necessarily have a career mode in the way that most games do. Instead, Skateboard Madness will have you moving from map to map, playing through 3 different game modes. The first is Street Race, which isn't really a race at all. It's actually a lot like skating through rings, but with an abnormally large amount of checkpoints. The second mode is Collector, where you pick up icons from the same spot as Street Race, but this time you do it in whatever order you feel like. The last mode is Freestyle, which is really just a fun way of saying high score mode. It's exactly what you would expect. Get a specific score before the time runs out. You have to complete all 3 game modes on one map in order to move on to the next. This was actually really surprising. At 45 megabytes, I wasn't expecting to get multiple levels. I thought for sure it would be a one and done kind of thing. I also wasn't expecting to be able to pick from different characters. None of them look good. They all look like Nintendo 64 characters. But this is a PlayStation 2 game from 2007. Bro, any Europeans out there, I am so sorry that you guys got shoveled this kind of shit. That being said, I'll give the really lazy devs credit for giving the players some variety in their shovelware bargain bin game. They could have done nothing at all and just given the player one model and been like, yeah, fuck it, that's good. Let's talk about that gameplay. Oh man, where do I even begin? Well, for starters, the basic movement in this game is horrendous. I actually now feel bad about criticizing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD because it could have been much worse. The player character here moves at 2 speeds, inconsistent while braking, and fast as fuck. Turning the board is really janky. When you're moving, it isn't so bad, but when you're standing still, turning slows down to a crawl or speeds up so much that you can't control it. The ollie is just horrible. The idea is that holding the ollie button for a longer time will let you ollie higher. The player model actually does a wind-up animation to indicate this is happening. What the game doesn't tell you is that there are only 2 heights for ollie. You can tap ollie short, which is useful for one very specific important thing that I'll tell you about in a minute. The other is ollie high, which is like Pro Skater Moon Gravity without the extra height. The hang time in this game is horrendous. To make matters worse, doing a horizontal spin sucks. When you ollie from a horizontal space, the camera will stay centered behind you. I mean, you can't see behind you in real-world skateboarding either when you do something like that, but this has nothing to do with realism. The programmers just actually didn't program a dedicated spin for the horizontal space. How do I know this? Because many parts of this game are unfinished or intentionally broken for padding. Let me show you what I mean. In freestyle mode, doing a kickflip from a standing position doesn't actually give you any points. You have to chain that kickflip into a grind or an air trick for it to count, but there are problems with that. Most of the rails in this game have really bad collision, and often have no collision at all. There are a few exceptions to that, but the majority of them are broken in some way or another. I was stunned to find out that I could grind, considering how limited this game's trick set really is. I did it the first time by accident. To grind, you have to tap circle on top of a rail and then balance. It's an obvious ripoff of the Pro Skater balance system, but that isn't the worst part. Do you know what else circle does? That's right, it's the grab button. So because this game is lazy and bad, you can't actually do grabs during a horizontal ollie. While you're horizontal, that button is reserved for grinds only. But when you're vertical, you can't do any grinding at all. You can't catch yourself with a grind, and you can't grind the coping on a ramp when you're going upward. I mean, the ramps are grindable objects, you just can't do it if you're moving up from the face of the ramp. Since you can't chain these things together, there is no combo multiplier. Tricks give you a flat score for each trick no matter how much you chain together. There's also no score fall off. Tricks give you the exact same amount of points regardless of how many times you do them. Remember how I said the short ollie would be important? Well, we can abuse this game's own bad design to easily destroy the high score runs. The exploit is simple. Find a rail, preferably a long one, spam cross and circle repeatedly as fast as you can. Repeat this process over and over again until you have the required score for the level. Freestyle runs, unfortunately, don't just end when you get the objective score. You're forced to suffer through a whole 10 minutes every single time. But if you think freestyle mode is bad, we haven't even touched the worst parts yet. Street race mode is a really boring way to keep you busy for an unnecessary amount of time. The idea is simple. Skate from checkpoint to checkpoint. Sounds easy, no? Well, this game sucks ass. The checkpoints are laid out in such a way that you're almost certain to fall or miss them. To make matters worse, they have a tiny hitbox, meaning you have to be really precise. This might not matter so much if the game was fair to begin with. The amount of checkpoints is always just shy of being too many to collect within the time limit. You need to minimize your falling as much as possible in order to save those crucial few seconds. You really need them. Oftentimes, checkpoints will be placed in spots that aren't easy to get to. In Stage 2, the checkpoints will have you moving up and down this thick staircase, and I am convinced it's intentionally designed to stop you from making progress. For the first few steps, you can short ollie up to the top, but the top step almost all the way around is slightly too high to hit with a short ollie, so you need to do a long ollie to get up higher. The problem with that is that touching any of the corners turns you back to the bottom of the stairs, so the actual window to do all of these ollies is extremely tight. I'm not making it out worse than it actually is. I tested this a few times. That top step is just a tiny tick higher, and based on how the checkpoints are laid out, it's intentionally designed like that to stop the player from being able to make good progress and move on. That doesn't mean it's impossible or anything, but it does mean that the developers made the conscious decision to pad the actual gameplay time by rigging the bad design against the player. Like I said before, collector mode is just street race mode where the checkpoints are out of order, but there's a catch. The amount of time you have to collect everything is cut in half, meaning you have to develop your own complicated speedrun just to complete it. In Stage 1, it isn't so bad. The amount of collectibles to the amount of time is more than doable. But in Stage 2, you have an extremely thin amount of time to collect a fuck ton of items, so you really need to make the most of it. While I'm saying this, it's worth keeping in mind that this game is literally broken. It just doesn't work half of the time. Falling can happen at random, even if you're in a completely unmodified state. Most of the item collision is broken, meaning parts often do things that they shouldn't do, like being able to use a light post as a quarter pipe. Things that don't look like ramps act like ramps by design. You can grind the rounded ramps. Going upward on a ramp will send you straight upward though, so you can't grind the rounded ramps if you're going up on them, and you don't have any maneuverability while in air. Tricks often don't register at all, and sometimes register so late that you're guaranteed to fall down. Do you see where I'm going with this? This game only has 3 playable game modes, and because it's so goddamn broken, all 3 of those simple ideas become much more complicated than they should be. Difficulty isn't something that you get out of cheap tricks and lazy code. Difficulty is something you get out of good design. I can't even really call what this game does difficult, because it's just bullshit most of the time. The craziest part about this whole thing is just how much effort went into making this effortless pile of trash. In total, there are 6 riders, 6 playable stages, 3 goals per stage, 2 flip tricks, many different grab tricks, a grind with the balance meter, and a variety of design. The stages aren't just identical copies of each other, they actually have a pretty decent amount of varying visuals. They aren't necessarily terrible either. With a little bit of refinement, they would make for decent custom levels for Thug Pro, but that being said, this was a game from 2007, and no amount of bilinear texture filtering will fix the fact that the textures are all really low resolution, like 64 by 64 pixels or so. I actually found that it looked a lot better with nearest texture filtering, because that at least made it feel like it had an art style. If I'm being honest, this game looks like one of those really bad Unity asset flips, but it's a PS2 game. Everything including the fonts on the screen look like purchased stock assets that were thrown together without much effort. The gameplay also feels as low effort as possible. Aside from the 4 directions, this game only uses 3 buttons for everything. The shoulders and triggers do nothing, and neither does the triangle button. I'm really confused. If the game itself was gonna be bad, then why go through the effort of extra stages at all? Why go through the effort of extra playable characters? Why go through the effort of adding a dedicated spin to vertical tricks but not to horizontal tricks? There are a ton of checkpoints in the game modes, and somebody had to put those there with some thought, but why? Why animate an indicator for holding the ollie button? Why animate multiple different falling animations? Why go through the trouble of animating an accurate balance meter? Why intentionally remove collision and disorient pieces just to artificially pad the difficulty? Why are there all of these things that look like like somebody wanted to make a game sprinkled around in this extremely low quality bit of scam artistry. I just don't understand. If it were some college student's hobby project or something, a lot of this would make a lot more sense. But one thing is for sure, I'm much more interested in Phoenix games than I was before. I want to see just how bad it gets. The last thing I want to talk about is the soundtrack. This game has a single piece of music, and I'm almost certain it's the default project for some audio software. It only lasts a few seconds, and it loops infinitely. So it starts to get old before you've even started to listen to it. To make it worse, the sound effects in this game are ear-piercingly loud. It sounds like somebody used a cheap microphone with the gain cranked up to record what they thought skateboard noises sounds like. Just so it's out there, I didn't play through this whole game. The collector run on stage 3 is really cheaply designed, and I didn't want to waste any more time trying to speedrun a game that I'm never gonna play again, so I stopped playing there for the sake of my sanity. At the end of everything, I feel confident giving Skateboard Madness Extreme Edition a 0 out of 10. I've played a shit ton of games, and only a select handful of those games deserve a 0. This is one of those games. Not because it's shovelware, not because it's poorly made. I could excuse some things and give this game 1 or 2 points if it wasn't just a cold bastardization of something I love. Skateboarding is a fucking awesome thing. It emphasizes freedom and pushing the limit. This game emphasizes restricting you to the fullest of its ability. Between the severely limited variety of things you can do, and the intentionally broken things that exist to prevent you from moving on, it's just a middle finger to skateboarders everywhere. If there was ever somebody out there who got this game as a kid, bro, I am so sorry. I love skateboarding, and I hate the thought that this might have been some poor dude's first exposure to it. If I were a kid and this was the first thing I saw that was skateboarding related, I would have avoided it for the rest of my life. Now that I'm done with all of that, I can get back on track and dive into more of the Tony Hawk series of games. But before I do, there's been a lot of buzz about one Pro Skater spin-off title that I missed, a wakeboarding game, and it wouldn't be right of me to ignore that. So until then, thank you, and have a nice day.